Hello, dear students. Greeting to you from Department of Human Morphology. My name is Dmitry Starchik, and as usual, I am glad to introduce you the next topic of human anatomy. Today we will discuss and get new knowledge about endocrine systems. I see all of you, not all, but enough people. That is a constant numbers of students who visiting our lecture, and that's fine. And I always happy when see a lot of students on my lecture. But today is an exception, because I would say your group is an exception, because only 5 or 6 person visiting our courses, our lecture courses. Okay, if you hear me clearly, let me take my presentation, and let's get started. Endocrine system. Okay. In last lectures, we examined another category, different category of glands, and call them exocrine glands. But now we are going to talk about another group of organs, and call them endocrine glands, which doesn't have ducts. Usually, a moment. The classical distinction between exocrine and endocrine glands has been the presence or absence of ducts. Most exocrine glands secrete their products by way of a duct onto an epithelial surface, such as the skin or the mucosa of the digestive tract. Endocrine glands, by contrast, are ductless. They don't have ducts, and they release secretions, or we call that increte, in the blood stream, just right in the blood. For this reason, hormones were originally called internal secretion, and the word endocrine still alludes to this fact. Exocrine secretions have extracellular effects, such as the digestion of food, whereas endocrine secretions have intracellular effect. They alter cell metabolism. These glands, I mean endocrine glands, produce hormones that go directly in the bloodstream, as I said. these small organs, usually all endocrine organs are small and have been named endocrine glands, and together they combine in the endocrine system. This system includes various organs and small cells united by the common name, and these glands delicately manage all processes in our body, in the human body. They do affects our mood, cause love and stress and many other feelings. Therefore, it is far to say hormones rules the world. As you see, this is the phrase I put up to the beginning slide of our lecture, and I would say that is true. So let's see how hormones or endocrine organs manage and rule the world. And we will discuss some common questions like classification of endocrine glands, and then we see the development of every endocrine organs, and discuss the specific features and specific characteristics of all endocrine organs we could find in our body. Let's start with the definition and define the endocrine glands. Endocrine glands are organs consisting of specific glandular cells that specialize in the formation and release into the blood of special biological active substances, hormones that regulate and integrate the functions of other organs and the even whole organism. As you see, the term endocrine glands comes from the Greek. It means endo, that means inside, and krina, which means to secrete. So these secrets, hormones, regulate mostly all function of the reproductive organs, the growth and development of the body, even the intensity of the metabolic process in our organism. Hormone mobilize protective function and maintain the constancy of the internal environment. The endocrine glands appeared later in evolution process. They appeared later than the exocrine glands. So it means they are a little younger than exocrine glands. But endocrine systems, along with the central nervous system, regulates and integrates all organs and systemic in our body. So if you see the student book, the endocrine system and nervous system are combined together in the regulating systems of the organism. Let's see history. A couple of words about history. The term internal secretion was introduced in 1855 by the French physiologist Claude Bernard. You see this scientist. Here it's picture of Claude Bernard, and it is reasonable to say that another German physiologist, Arnold Berthold, here picture of Arnold Berthold, in 1849, it means 6 years before, he published a work, a scientific work, where he showed that the transplantation of testes to castrate rooster, that is the home bird, maybe this is some kind of chicken, prevents them from the developing post-castration syndrome. I hope you understand what castration means. It is then the process when the gonads or organs belonging to the reproductive systems are removed from the organism. So that was some number of experiences of Arnold Berthold that he insisted that some of organs like testes in roosters are responsible for the some specific feature and characteristic in organism. So please remember these two names of physiologists which develop the concept of endocrine glands. What kind of common properties are typical for the endocrine glands? First of all, they have no excretory ducts. As I said, excretory ducts are typical for exocrine organs, but there are no excretory ducts in endocrine glands. The second feature is that all endocrine glands secrete biologically active substances into the blood, sometimes into the lymph. That is another fluid in our body, and we call these substances and chemicals hormones. This term comes from the Greek language, which means hormone. In English, it means to induce. And another two scientists, Bayliss and Starling, give this term. The third feature, it is also very important feature, that the endocrine glands are lightweight. They have a very small group of cells. Sometimes they weigh even 25 milligrams. It is very, very small, and sometimes it is only cells produces hormones. So the largest gland, endocrine glands in our body, is a thyroid gland. It weighs about 60 grams only. And another important characteristic of the endocrine glands is that they have very good blood circulation. They have a lot of blood vessels because they produce hormones, and hormones come into the blood, so it means the blood circulation should be high, should be in the high level in all endocrine glands. This feature should be taken in consideration by surgeons who operated endocrine glands, and when they cut endocrine glands, they get a lot of blood, a lot of bleeding from these organs. Some next slides I'd like to show you types of hormone mediated information transmission. It means the how hormones manage in other cells. So there are 4 types of hormone transmission in the biology, in the biological objects. The first one we call autocrine secretion. Autocrine secretion, this term, means that hormones are synthesized and secreted by the same cells. The blue figure is the hormone which secrete from the cells, and it manages the same cells which secrete. It is autocrine secretion, it means. Usually autocrine secretion plays a role in the tumor development. So that is some kind of very early phylogenesis mechanism which take role only in the tumor, on the development of the some cancers cells in the body. It doesn't take role in the normal cells. That second paracrine secretion. This is when hormones produced by one cells, number one, but it regulate the near cells located nearby of the first one cells. And usually this mechanism, this type of transmission act only in the close proximity to the site of synthesis, and it takes place in the immune systems, when one cell stimulate other to fight against microbes and viruses, giving them the so-named tissue hormones. It means hormones which are not in the blood but in the interstitial fluid around another cells. But the most popular secretion is the secretion when the one cells, number one, this is the hormone producing cells, this is the cells of endocrine organs, produce hormone into the blood or lymph, and then it comes to the all body and influence of all organs and systems, and most endocrine organs use this mechanism of transmission, of hormone transmission. That is most typical. Another two types called neurosecretion. These types when hormones or neuromodulators, neurohormones, so named neurohormones, are produced in specialized nerve cells like here. This is nerve cells. You see that it is a neuron the cells, the main cells, main cell in the nervous systems, and release the hormone in the blood vessels, and then it is act to the other cells. So this is typical for the cells located in the central nervous system, which also have endocrine activity. And by the way, this mechanism, this type of transmission illustrate the close connection between the nervous system and the endocrine system. And the last types of hormone transmission located between is common between the neurons or cells of nervous systems when use neurotransmitters. That is the substance coming into the synapse. Synapse is a connection between two neuron cells, and they use special chemicals to get electrical signals from one neuron to other neuron, and that is also some kind of hormone transmission, but actually this is not hormones telling truth. This is not hormones, that is a neurotransmitter, but the mechanism is like the transmission of the chemicals between cells. Another picture show you the hormone function, and it is important to know that all of hormone producing organs, meaning endocrine organs, first of all, they ensure the growth and development of the body. So they are very important in the first life period, in childhood, and then they help newborn to grow and develop. The hormones also adapt the body for changing, for constantly changing environment conditions. They help us to survive, and sometimes in the winter is cold, so we need to produce more heat in the body, and it's regulated by the hormones. And also very important function is maintain the homeostasis. This is the constant concentration of different chemicals and ions in our body, and this is also the role of hormones. Some hormone properties are visible on the next slide, and you see that hormones is the chemicals which are active in very small concentration, in very small amounts. They they circulated in the blood or lymph mostly, and their control is through blood and lymph. Usually hormones have slow effects, but that is a very long-lasting effects in comparison with the nerve regulation. Usually all hormones act all organs, whole organism, because they are being circulated in the blood, and blood is almost in all organs, so they act and manage all organs just together. And that is the good that most hormones have specificity for all species. It means we can take hormones from animals and use them for treatment of humans. As you see by chemical structures, hormones are divided into three groups. They may be proteins, lipids, and steroids. It is some kind of combination of lipids and proteins. Next table shows the feature and specific characteristic of nervous and endocrine system. As I said, nervous regulation and endocrine regulation are very close because they regulate, and the first and the second system regulate the processes in our body. But some of the difference, what kind of difference we would see here? The nervous systems communicate by means of electrical impulses and neurotransmitters, that is the chemicals. But endocrine system use only hormones, only chemicals. Touched cells or resulting cells for nervous systems are muscle. They have different type of muscle tissue: smooth muscle, cardiac, and skeletal cells in the muscle tissue. They also regulate glands and other neurons. But endocrine system regulate all cells. It means that endocrine systems is more popular, let's say, in our organism. As you see, speed reactions is very quick for nervous system, but reaction of endocrine systems usually last time, sometimes from second to a couple of days, and duration is also longer for the duration of the reaction endocrine system, and the management of managing of endocrine systems takes longer time. Here you see a different feature of exocrine and endocrine glands. Here you see exocrine glands. They have possibility to secrete chemicals in the cavity of the body. More often it is the digestive tract, but the endocrine glands, they show here, has no ducts and only capillaries and blood vessels around in the endocrine cells, and hormones come directly in their blood vessels. But by the morphological structure, the endocrine glands may be glands without follicles, and some glands have special features like the small balls with the fluid inside, and they are named follicles. So endocrine glands may be not follicles glands, but follicle endocrine glands. Important classification. It was first was morphological classification of endocrine gland, then the physiological classification of the glands. They may be central regulatory organs, means central endocrine organs like hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and pineal gland. They are located in the central nervous system in the head. Then the second group are peripheral endocrine glands like thyroid glands, parathyroid glands, and adrenal glands. And usually the first group regulate the second group by special hormones. So group number 2 is under control of the organs from the group number 1. Organs that combine endocrine and non-endocrine functions, that is, of course, reproductive organs, testicles and ovaries, placenta and pancreas. They secrete and produce hormones. And the fourth group of endocrine organs are single hormone producing cells. We call them acute systems. It is not organs, but it is only cells producing hormones. Another classification of endocrine glands are shown here, and that is the classification by mechanism of regulation. Usually we rare in the human anatomy we use this kind of classification rarely, but the classification by origin is most popular classification, and I recommend you to study and remember this classification. As you see, we have in embryo three embryon layers: ectoderma, endoderma, and mesoderma. So organs, endocrine organs, comes from the ectoderma, have ectodermal origin, and that is organs neurogenic group like hypothalamus, pituitary gland, posterior lobe, and pineal gland. It is also maybe a derivate from the oral ectoderm, so named Rathke's pouch. And as you see, anterior lobe of pituitary gland. Pituitary gland has two lobes, posterior and anterior, and they have different origin. And sympathoadrenal group, which is the adrenal medulla in suprarenal glands, and paraganglia. This is the small organs located near the large vessels in abdominal cavity. We call them paraganglia. So this is a group which was originated from ectodermal layer. Intradermal origin has a branchiogenic group. This is the some intradermal, that is part of embryo throat or embryo pharynx, and they special pouches, special cavity, small cavities give the thyroid glands, parathyroid glands, and thymus glands. So three very important endocrine organs come from the beginning part of the digestive tract in embryo, and we call them branchiogenic groups. Please remember, take in the memory this name, branchiogenic groups. And the intradermal origin has also pancreas islets. It is a small group of cells located between the exocrine parts, acinuses of the pancreas, and we call them islets. They have endodermal origin as well. Mesodermal origin. This is first of all adrenal cortex. That is a part of adrenal glands. As you see, adrenal glands have medulla and cortex. Medulla comes from the ectodermal layer, but cortex is originated from the mesodermal layer. Interrenal systems. This is the cells located in the kidneys and regulated the quantity of the urine. It is urine regulated hormones. They produce urine regulated hormones. Testicles and ovary, reproductive organs coming from the mesodermal layers. So very important classification. Please take more attention to this classification. And then we will start different organs, endocrine organs, and we begin with the hypothalamus. If we take a closer look of the hypothalamus, we would say that that is the most important endocrine center of the body, located just under the thalamus. Thalamus, it is a round shape, oval shaped part of the diencephalon, but under the thalamus is the area called hypothalamus, and that is important centers of all visceral organs, and sometimes we call hypothalamus like visceral brain of our body, of our organism, because it regulate different function of internal organs. But hypothalamus also is a center of for producing hormones, and some hormones are produced in the cells of hypothalamus. Anatomically, hypothalamus forms the floor and walls of the third ventricle of the brain, that is the cavity of the diencephalon, and usually hypothalamus regulates primitive function of the body, ranging from water balance to sex drive, and carries out many of its role by way of the pituitary gland. Here you see the hormones, names of hormones, hypothalamus hormones, and how they produce. Actually, such hormones like vasopressin and oxytocin produces in the cells of hypothalamus in the paraventricular nucleus, it is blue, and supraoptic nucleus, it is green cells. They produce hormone. Paraventricular nucleus produce oxytocin, and supraoptic nucleus produce vasopressin. It is visible. Sometimes we call vasopressin antidiuretic hormone. It is the synonyms. Antidiuretic hormones and vasopressin means the same. Another nucleus located in the intermediate part of hypothalamus produce chemicals, produce hormones named liberins and statins. These hormones act to the anterior lobe of thalamus, and we call them hypothalamus hormones. You see the name of all these hormones here, and this is liberin and statin. You see the last part of the word. Look, here's the statin or liberin, releasing. It means releasing, it means this liberin. What is the function of these hormones of hypothalamus? These six hypothalamus hormones regulate the anterior pituitary, and they can stimulate anterior pituitary gland to produce hormones, or they suppress or decrease releasing of hormones of this anterior lobe of the hypophysis or pituitary gland. So the main idea is that hypothalamus are responsible for regulating function of the hypophysis, and even some hormones producing in the hypothalamus region come into the hypophysis in the posterior lobe, and there they come into the blood. So that's why I'm absolutely sure that the hypothalamus is most important part of the endocrine system than even hypophysis. As you see, regulating of pituitary gland by liberins and statins, they have two pairs, liberin and statin. Liberin activated, statin decreased, producing hormones in the hypothalamus, in the hypophysis. Sorry, I'd like to accept your attention to the one hormone of hypothalamus called oxytocin. Oxytocin has a variety of reproductive function in situation ranging from intercourse to breastfeeding. It surges in both sexes during sexual arousal and orgasm, possibly aiding in the propulsion of semen through the male reproductive tract. And oxytocin also stimulates uterine contraction that helps transport sperm up to the female tracts. Oxytocin also functions in feeling of sexual satisfaction. It's very important, I would say, and emotional bonding between parents. So a lot of oxytocin has produced during childbirth. It stimulates labor contraction and stimulates lactating of the breast, which help breast to be flowed with milk, and it helps to mother to feed baby. Interesting fact was opened by German scientists that they found the role of oxytocin for good relation between husbands, and I think that hormones may be called as a hormone of human joy and moral hormones. It is very important, very interesting, because 30 years ago, when I studied in the military medical academy, we just know that oxytocin stimulated the uterus and helped to lactate female and nothing more. I was surprised that time, because I didn't understand why oxytocin circulated in the male body if we don't have men don't have uterus, and so it was strange why such hormone is in the male organism. But as you see, that is a hormone for social relations, and even it is not for humans. Interesting fact is that female mammals tend to neglect their infants if they don't have oxytocin in the blood, and that is very important hormone for all kind of spices. Next is the pituitary gland or hypophysis. If you take a look here, this part is hypothalamus, but the small like looking like the small ball located in the thella turcica here. This is the pituitary gland. As you see, the weight is very small, sometimes no more than 1 gram, and only 10 millimeter, from 10 to 15 millimeter, and located in the thella turcica. Pituitary gland, sometimes we call the central or the main endocrine organs, the central endocrine organs in the human body, but not only in the human body, in the body. But as we saw before, that is that organs is under constantly control of hypothalamus. So two of these organs are close, have very close connection, but I think the pituitary gland is not number one. It is number two, but number one is, of course, hypothalamus. Pituitary gland has two lobes, anterior one and posterior lobe, and they have different origin. Anterior lobe come from the ectodermal Radke pouch, but posterior lobe it is the same as the hypothalamus, and it is a close relation with the hypothalamus by infundibulum. This is the connection part of the pituitary gland with the hypothalamus. And anterior lobe, there are three parts of the anterior lobe, and we distinguish only two parts of the posterior lobe. The anterior and posterior lobe produce different hormones. Anterior lobe is richly vascularized and contains 5 different cells types. These cells produce 7 different hormones, a lot of hormones. All of these hormones are here, and they belong to the anterior lobe. Posterior lobe of the pituitary contains the axons and axon terminals of roughly 50,000 hypothalamic neurons. It means here comes axons, which are responsible for the transport of oxytocin and vasopressin. And we just discussed these hormones, and between the anterior lobe is a small part belongs to the anterior lobe called pars intermedica, and this secrete melanocyte stimulating hormone it is used to activate epithalamus. All hormones of pituitary gland are on this picture. The name you see from the posterior lobe. There are 2 hormones and 6 + 1 hormones in the anterior lobe. Here picture shows you development or embryonal development of the pituitary gland. Here you see the mouth of embryon and the small pouch called also Radke pouch is the origin for the anterior lobe of pituitary gland. but the part of the diencephalon, this is a neurohypophyseal bud, we call that, combine together with the Radke pouch and form pituitary gland together. So don't forget, please don't forget that pituitary gland has two parts and they have different origin. This is also a picture of pituitary gland development. Here the Radke pouch, and this is the infundibulum with the neurohypophyseal bud forming pituitary gland together. Because of the different origins, the pituitary gland has two lobes, and each lobe has different blood circulation. Anterior lobe has the connection with the hypothalamus vessels and form special portal systems between hypothalamus and anterior lobe. With these portal systems or portal veins, the liberin and statin come to the anterior lobe and regulate producing pituitary gland hormones. But the posterior lobe or posterior pituitary has specific isolated circulation and no portal systems. We could find portal systems only in the anterior pituitary. It is important for the function. I could talk a long time, very long time, about pituitary hormones, because they are very important hormones, but unfortunately we have only one lecture for endocrine system. But you see all of hormones coming from the anterior lobe, and some small description of function of these hormones. First hormones we called follicle stimulating hormone. It is abbreviated FSH hormone, which FSH hormone stimulate reproductive organs like testes and ovaries. The second hormone, luteinizing hormones, abbreviated LH hormone, also responsible for the stimulate ovaries. It is not clear what kind of role of LH has for men, but we will see. We will see it later, because a lot of special sources and searching for physiologists just is about LH hormone. Here you see all hormones from anterior pituitary hormone in the table. I put this table especially for you, that you can read and name these hormones. If some people have a lack of hormones in degrees of secretion, that comes to the adiposis genital dystrophy. This is a disease of whole body. Usually it is caused by degrees of secretion gonadotropin hormones like LH and FSH hormones, and this is usually with it's combined with high weight, heavy weight, and a lot of fat, and hypogonadism. This is a syndrome with when the genital organs is small than usual. Then it's not normal syndrome, of course. Thyroid stimulating hormones, that is with abbreviated TSH hormone, stimulates growth of the thyroid glands. It is responsible for secretion of thyroid hormones. Adrenocorticotropic hormones is hormones that stimulate suprarenal cortex to secrete glucocorticoids, and it is important to survive when people feel stress. This hormones is in the high level. Then prolactin hormone stimulated mammary glands to synthesize milk. Usually milk produced in female organism. So it is not clear, still not clear what prolactin does in the male organism. As you see, there's a lot of white spot in function of pituitary hormone till now, but the hormones which produce in the pituitary is also called growth hormones or growth hormone somatotropin. Usually somatotropin, this is name of the hormone, growth hormones secreted by the anterior lobe, cells in the anterior lobe of pituitary gland, and abbreviated is GH hormone. And this hormone is responsible for growing and it stimulates mitosis and cellular differentiation and in the body. It is responsible for growing of the muscles, of the bones, and even for the liver's functions. Very important hormones. If there is a lot of growth hormones in the body, it causes increased growth of long tubular bones people became very high, and we call that gigantism. Usually the somatotropic hormone increasing production we find with the with the pituitary adenoma. This is a special tumor of the anterior lobe. And if the pituitary adenoma takes place and happens in childrenhood, it leads to the development of gigantism, as you see here. If there is lack of somatotropin hormones, it comes to the if it happens in young children, it leads to the growth retardation. So a person remains a dwarf all his life. You see, this is small people. They have lack of the somatotropin, and the term is pituitary dwarfism. Some of the famous dwarf was Joseph Borowlaski from Europe. He was 61 centimeter height, but now I found this fact in Guinness Book that the smallest people on the planet is Chandra Bahadur Dangi. He is 75 years old and live in Nepal, and his height is only 56 centimeters. And the smallest woman or girl is from India, and her name is Yoti MG, and she is only 58 centimeter tall. And you see here a picture. Now I think she is about 20 years, and this is her picture from the primary school. The tallest person on our planet, I mean the fact that was recorded in the literature, was Robert Wadlow from the United States. He was 2 meter 72 centimeter. Unfortunately, he died in 22. It was in the 1940s, and because such giants has problem with the immune systems. The immune system cannot serve such as a huge body, and the immune system comes to the inflammation, lung inflammation, and some inflammation disease, and come to the dies, unfortunately. All of these facts, all of this situation registered when the children has adenoma or lack somatotropin hormone, but when it happens in the adult, it comes to another disease called acromegaly. Usually these people have very large hands and foots, and they have very massive mandibulas, and they look a little bit strange, let's say. Next organ is pineal gland. Pineal gland, named for its pine cone shape, is attached to the roof of the third ventricle of the brain. beneath the posterior end of the corpus callosum. Here, that is the pineal gland. Another name is epiphysis. Interesting that philosopher René Descartes thought that he lived in 16th century. It was a long time ago. So this philosopher René Descartes thought that pineal gland is a seat, is a place where is human soul. So that is the place for storing human soul. If so, children must have more soul than adults. A child pineal gland is about 8 millimeter long and 5 millimeter wide, but after age 7 it regresses rapidly and is no more than a thinly shrunken mass of fibrous tissue in adult. It means that after childhood, the pineal gland regresses very, very quickly. Pineal secretion peaks between the ages 1 and 5 years and declines 75% by the end of puberty. We no longer look for the human soul in the pineal gland, but this little organ remains an intriguing mystery. It seems wired to respond to information from the eyes about the relative hours of light and darkness in the environment. The pineal gland may play a role in establish 24 hours circadian rhythms of physiological function, synchronized with the cycle of daylight and darkness. It means that hormones of the pineal glands are sensible to the daylights and darkness. First hormones, very famous hormones called melatonin. It is the hormones producing in the darkness, usually after 12 p.m. normal, and in winter time, when the days are short and people get less sunlight. These hormones, if we use these hormones like a tablet, we just after 1 hour we want to sleep, to go to bed. So now melatonin is used for the treatment of sleeping less and help people to sleep. Interesting that modern people usually have lack of the melatonin because we usually work in computers when we have a lot of electrical lights, and it decreases producing melatonin. This is responsible for it is bad that melatonin is not producing properly. it comes to the to the entwicklung and development of the tumor in the body. So don't work very late in the night, and remember that melatonin is important for anti-tumor function. As you see, modern people, that is a good expression. Modern people are poisoned by the light. And the next hormone of the pineal gland is serotonin. And serotonin is joy hormones. Usually it is produced during the day, and it is produced by the sunlight, and stimulate sex hormones and stimulate good mood. So this hormone is called happiness hormone, very important hormone. Next is thyroid gland, the organ located in the neck, and it is the largest adult gland to have purely endocrine function. Thyroid glands weighs from 20 to 25 grams, and it is composed of two lobes, as you see. Thyroid glands located forward to the thyroid cartilage, so it names by this cartilage, and has sometimes has pyramidal lobe, usually right and left lobes, and between lobes we see the part of the thyroid glands called isthmus. And about 50% of people have an accessory pyramidal lobe. I mean, here this it is may be, but may not be visible sometimes, and some people have lack of isthmus when there is no isthmus at all, and sometimes we find pyramidal lobe, this just here near the hyoid bone, or sometimes in the tongue. I would say that thyroid glands may have different shape. This is picture of embryonic development of thyroid glands, and this is a special bed, special pouch in the pharynx, which is give the thyroid glands. It comes from the some recess, some small cavity of the embryon pharynx. Regarding the histological structure of the thyroid glands, that main histological feature of the thyroid gland is that it is composed mostly of sacs. This sacs called thyroid follicles. If you see such picture with the cells around some red colloid containing hormones, thyroid hormones, you should be sure that you see thyroid glands. It is very typical for that organ. Follicular cells around the colloid secrete mainly the hormone named thyroxine hormone, or we call them T4 hormones, because it has 4 iodine atoms in the structure. Almost each thyroid hormones have iodide. This is the element which is concentrated in colloid here. Here is iodine, sorry. Maybe this is the better. Iodine element. And it is in the thyroid hormones. In T4 there is iodine 4 elements, but another hormones, triiodthyronine, has only 3 molecules of the iodine. 3 molecules of the iodine. Okay, and another hormones which regulate concentration of the calcium called thyrocalcitonin, and these hormones keeps the balance between bone deposition and resorption in favor of deposition, and the blood calcium level falls as the calcium is incorporated into the bones. It means these hormones usually increase decrease calcium level. This is responsible for decreasing calcium level. And this is the follicle structure. Here you see all name of the hormones of thyroid glands and their function, and some of clinical causes when people have a lot of thyroid hormones. It comes to the Basedov disease, such as with big thyroid glands here, and strange syndrome with eyes which just look like bigger eyes, or this is called exophthalmos syndrome. Decreases in thyroid function come to the myxedema diseases. Usually it is composed with the edema, such as tumor, apathy. Usually these people very passive, and they have decreasing in the body temperature, and another, if it comes from the child period of time, it comes to the bad development of the brain, and these people get cretinism as a syndrome. Some of them bigger enlargement of the thyroid glands registered in the areas with the low iodine. When iodine elements is lack in the water or in the soil, it may come to the enlargement of thyroid glands, and it is even visible on the Leonardo da Vinci picture, Madonna maybe has endemic goiter. This is the name of such diseases. Parathyroid glands are located usually on the posterior surface of the thyroid glands, and they are small ovoid glands in the neck. Usually there are 4 of them, but about 5% of people have more parathyroid glands. They most often adhere to the posterior side of the thyroid glands, like visible here, and approximate position shown in the figure, but the parathyroid glands are highly variable in location and not always attached to the thyroid gland. They can occur as far superiorly as the hyoid bone and as far inferiorly as the aortic arch. And the histological structure show here make visible that parathyroid glands have a thin fibrous capsula separating them from the thyroid tissue, and the parathyroid glands are supplied with blood and drained by the same vessels as the thyroid glands. Hypocalcemia, calcium deficiency, stimulates the chief cells of parathyroids to secrete parathyroid hormones, or abbreviated PTH. These hormones raises blood calcium levels by promoting intestinal calcium absorption, inhibiting urinary calcium excretions, and indirectly stimulating osteoclasts to resorb bones. Interesting that when happens thyroid cancer and other dysfunction sometimes require the surgical removal of thyroid tissue. It comes because of their variable location and small size. The parathyroid glands are sometimes accidentally removed along with the thyroid glands. Without hormones replacement therapy, the lack of the parathyroid hormones leads to the rapid decline in the blood calcium level. It calls hypocalcemia, or a deficiency of blood-borne calcium. It makes the skeletal muscles overly excitable and prone to exhibit spasmodic contractions called hypocalcemic tetany. You hear this syndrome, and the tetany is a total contraction of all skeletal muscles during hypocalcemia. It is very dangerous for life, and without therapy it may come to the death. Next is the thymus organ located in the thoracic cavity. This gormons is very good. Has a large size in children's, and the thymus plays a role in the 3 systems: endocrine, lymphatic, and immune. It is bi-lobed gland. You see 2 lobes, right and left. Usually left is longer, left lobe is longer, and in the fetus and infant it is enormous in comparison to adjacent organs. Sometimes the thymus protruding between the lungs nearly as far as the diaphragm and extending upward into the neck. The thymus continues to grow until the age of 5 or 6 years, also not as fast as other thoracic organs, so its relative size decreases. After the age of 14, it undergoes a rapid involution. It weighs about 20 grams up to the age 60, but it becomes increasingly fatty and less glandular with age. In the elderly, it's a small, fibrous and fatty remnant, barely distinguishable from the surrounding mediastinal tissue. The thymus is a site of maturation for certain white blood cells that are critically important for immune defense. We call them lymphocytes or T, for the T because they come from the thymus. And as you see here, the thymus secretes several hormones: thymopoietin, thymosin, and thymolin. I don't know the right pronunciation. Maybe thymolin is better. And these hormones stimulate development of other lymphatic organs and regulate the development and concentration T lymphocytes in the blood. Pancreas is also organ which has double function. It is exocrine and endocrine organs. Most we discuss pancreas during our lecture for digestive system, but I'd like to show you the small cells, group of cells in the pancreas called pancreas islets. They were described firstly by Paul Langergans, and so sometimes we name them islets, Langergans islets. And this here you see the picture of Langergans islands, and they consist of different cells: alpha cells, about 20%, beta cells, about 70%, and delta cells. They produce different hormones. Most important, beta cells, because they secrete insulin. This is a hormone which decreases the level of the glucose in the blood. And also alpha cells produce glucagon, which increase level of the glucose in the blood. And here you see the summary table for pancreatic hormones. Most important, as I said, is the insulin produced with beta cells. The lack of insulin comes to the diabetes, and this disease is very popular, very famous now, because that is the pandemic of 21st century. Because of the diabetes occurs to the consumption of large amount of sugary foods. We eat a lot of sugary. Modern people exceeds the amount of sugar by 4 times. It comes to the diabetic, and usually this is there are a lot of bad complications of diabetes, such as a lot of fat, some of the complications connected with the overweight, vascular lesions like you see here, and sometimes it comes to the heart attacks and strokes. Suprarenal or adrenal glands are organs located on the superior poles of the kidneys, and they have a different shape. Left and right adrenal gland have different shape, but these hormones are also, like a pituitary gland, have different origin. The adrenal cortex come from the mesoderm, but medulla is the originated from the ectodermal layers, embryonal ectodermal layers. The cortex of the adrenal cortex has three zones: glomerulosa, zona fasciata, and zona reticularis. Adrenal medulla is smaller, but produce very important hormones. Here you see hormones of the adrenal cortex. I have no time to give you more detail about each hormones. I hope you read it later. And here is a table for adrenal hormones. The important one is aldosterone and cortisol hormones in the glomerulosa and fasciculosa zones. This is the diseases with coming with the lack of these hormones. And adrenal medulla is hormones producing in the central part of adrenal suprarenal gland or adrenal gland. And two hormones are important, very important, to provide a stress here. Adrenal hormones usually they provide adaptation for some fight and situation. They produce in the danger situation and help animals and people fight or flight. But modern people get a lot of stressed situation without fight and flight, and it comes to the stress. Another small organs called paraganglion, they red pieces of tissue with adrenal. They also produce paraphrine and norepinephrine. And organs, reproductive organs, ovariums, and here you see the ovarious hormones and their names. And testosterone is also is a chemical produced in the testes. Here you see the main hormone of the testis called testosterone. It stimulates men to be men. This is a lack of testosterone, but it is men with a lot of testosterone in the blood. Even some women have a lot of testosterone in the blood, and they look like men. That's all for now, my friends, and I don't want to keep you extra time, and as usual I wait your questions in the Moodle, in the forum in the Moodle, but don't forget also to take a test in the Moodle. That's all for now. Thank you for your attention, and hope to see you next Saturday in our lecture course. Thank you for attention. Wish you good weekends.